Ancient writings describe in detail an Anunnaki nuclear war that occurred several thousand years ago and destroyed Sumer. In 2000 BC, it was so destructive that it wiped out entire civilizations. From the Sumerian tablets to the oldest Indian writings, the Mahabharata, the evidence is overwhelming. Archaeologists say that in 2024 BC, the southern part of the Dead Sea broke out and ran south. People abandoned the area. All life died there. Evidence of nuclear radiation has been found in the Dead Sea area, which further cements the facts. The depiction of Anunnaki nuclear war in Sumerian tablets. We now know that there were hundreds of Sumerian tablets, like the Sumerian king list, were unearthed over the last 100 years. Starting in 1887, more than 100,000 tablets and fragments were dug up by the French. 1877, however, began the first successful excavation at a Sumerian site. In that year, the French under de Sarzeau began to excavate at Tello, the ancient Sumerian city of Lagash, an excavation which has been conducted by French archaeologists intermittently and with long interruptions almost to the present day. It was at this site that the first important Sumerian monuments were excavated, the objects and inscriptions of the Ishakus, or princes of Lagash. Here, more than 100,000 tablets and fragments were dug up, dating from the pre-Sargonid and Ur III periods. Scores of thousands of tablets have been dug up clandestinely by the native Arabs in the mounds of Sumer, especially in the ancient sites of Larsa, Sippar, and Umma. It is therefore difficult to estimate the number of Sumerian tablets and fragments now in the possession of the museums and private collections. 250,000 is probably a conservative guess. One particular tablet or set of tablets is the Lost Book of Enki, which describes in such detail the nuclear war. Following is the English translation of the writings, which describe a primitive perspective on the blast, cataclysm, and aftermath of a powerful nuclear detonation. Enlil to them words of forewarning said, "Ere the weapons are used, by the Anunnaki must the chariot's place be vacated. The cities must be spared, the people must not perish." In his skyship Nergal to the hiding place soared, Ninurta by his father was delayed. A word to his son alone Enlil wished to say, a secret to him alone reveal. About the prophecy of Galzu, and the choosing of Ibrum to Ninurta he told. Hot-headed is Nergal, make sure that the cities are spared, that Ibrum is forewarned, to Ninurta Enlil said. When Ninurta at the weapons place arrived, Nergal from the cavity had already them brought out. As their MEs from the long slumber he awakened, to each one of the 7 Nergal a task name gave. The one without rival, the first weapon he called, the blazing flame he named the second, the one who with terror crumbles he called the third, mountain melter, the fourth he called wind, that the rim of the world seeks, he named the fifth, the one who above and below no one spares was the sixth, the seventh with monstrous venom was filled, vaporizer of living things he called it. With Anu's blessing were the 7 to Nergal and Ninurta given, therewith to destruction wreak. When Ninurta at the place of the weapons of terror arrived, to destroy and annihilate, was Nergal ready. I shall kill the son, I will annihilate the father. Nergal with vengeance was shouting, the lands they covet will vanish, the sinning cities I will upheaval. So did Nergal enraged announce. Valiant Nergal, will you the righteous with the unrighteous destroy? So did Ninurta his comrade ask. The instructions of Enlil are clear. To the selected targets the way I will lead, you behind me will follow. The decision of the Anunnaki to me is known, Nergal to Ninurta said. For 7 days and 7 nights the signal from Enlil the two awaited. As was his intention, when his waiting was completed, Marduk to Babili returned. In the presence of his followers, with weapons armed, his supremacy he declared. 1,736 was the count of Earth years then. On that day, on that fateful day, Enlil to Ninurta the signal sent. To Mount Mashu, Ninurta departed, behind him Nergal followed. The mount and the plain, in the heart of the 4th region, Ninurta from the skies surveyed. With a squeezing in his heart, to Nergal a sign he gave. Keep off, to him he signaled. Then the first terror weapon from the skies Ninurta let loose. The top of Mount Mashu, with a flash it sliced off the mount's innards, in an instant it melted. Above the place of the celestial chariots the second weapon he unleashed. With a brilliance of 7 suns the plain's rocks into a gushing wound were made. The earth shook and crumbled. The heavens after the brilliance were darkened. With burnt and crushed stones was the plain of the chariots covered. Of all the forests that the plain had surrounded, only tree stems were left standing. It is done. Ninurta from the skyship, his black divine bird, words shouted. The control that Marduk and Nabu so coveted, of it they are forever deprived. Then to emulate Ninurta Nergal desired, to be Era, the annihilator his heart him urged. Following the king's highway, to the verdant valley of the 5 cities he flew. In the verdant valley where Nabu the people was converting, Nergal as a caged bird to squash him planned. Over the 5 cities, one after the other, Era upon each from the skies a terror weapon sent. The 5 cities of the valley he finished off, to desolation they were overturned. With fire and brimstones were they upheavaled. All that lived there to vapor was turned. By the awesome weapons were mountains toppled. Where the sea waters were barred, the bolt broke open. Down into the valley the sea's waters poured. By the waters was the valley flooded. When upon the city's ashes the waters poured, steam to the heavens was rising. It is done, Era in his skyship shouted. In Nergal's heart there was no more vengeance. Surveying their evil handiwork, the 2 heroes, by what they saw, were puzzled. By a darkening of the skies where the brilliances followed, then a storm to blow began. Swirling within a dark cloud, gloom from the skies an evil wind carried. As the day wore on, the sun on the horizon with darkness it obliterated. At nighttime a dreaded brilliance skirted its edges. The moon at its rising it made disappear. When dawn the next morning came, from the west, from the upper sea, a storm wind began blowing. The dark brown cloud eastward it directed. Toward the settled lands did the cloud spread. Wherever it reached, death to all that lives mercilessly it delivered. From the valley of no pity, by the brilliances spawned, toward Sumer the death was carried. To Enlil and Enki Ninurta and Nergal the alarm sounded. Unstoppable the evil wind, death to all delivers. The alarm Enlil and Enki to the gods of Sumer transmitted. Escape, escape, to them all they cried out. Let the people disperse, let the people hide. From their cities the gods did flee, like frightened birds from their nests escaping they were. The people of the lands by the evil storm's hand were clutched. Futile was the running, stealthy was the death. Like a ghost, the fields and cities it attacked. The highest walls, the thickest walls, like floodwaters it passed. No door could shut it out, no bolt could turn it back. Those who behind locked doors hid inside their houses like flies were felled. Those who to the streets fled, in the streets were their corpses piled up. Cough and phlegm the chests filled, the mouths with spittle and foam filled up. As the evil wind the people unseen engulfed, their mouths were drenched with blood. Slowly over the lands the evil wind blew. From west to east over plains and mountains it traveled. Everything that lived behind it was dead and dying. People and cattle, all alike, perished. The waters were poisoned. In the fields all vegetation withered. From Eridu in the south to Sippar in the north did the evil wind the land overwhelm. Babali, where Marduk's supremacy declared, by the evil wind was spared. Another tablet called Ninurta's Exploits describes the Anunnaki nuclear war in 2000 BC. The Lord cried, "Alas!" so that heaven trembled, and earth huddled at his feet and was terrified at his strength. Enlil became confused and went out of the Ekur. The mountains were devastated. That day the earth became dark, the Anunna trembled. The hero beat his thighs with his fists. The gods dispersed. The Anunna disappeared over the horizon like sheep. The Lord arose, touching the sky. Ninurta went to battle. With one step, he covered a league. He was an alarming storm and rode on the 8 winds towards the rebel lands. His arms grasped the lance. The mace snarled at the mountains. The club began to devour all the enemy. He fitted the evil wind and the sirocco on a pole. He placed the quiver on its hook. An enormous hurricane, irresistible, went before the hero, stirred up the dust, caused the dust to settle, leveled high and low, filled the holes. It caused a rain of coals and flaming fires. The fire consumed men. It overturned tall trees by their trunks, reducing the forests to heaps. Earth put her hands on her heart and cried harrowingly. The Tigris was muddied, disturbed, cloudy, stirred up. He hurried to battle on the boat, Makar Nuntaea. The people there did not know where to turn. They bumped into the walls. The birds there tried to lift their heads to fly away, but their wings trailed on the ground. The storm flooded out the fish there in the subterranean waters. Their mouths snapped at the air. It reduced the animals of the open country to firewood, roasting them like locusts. It was a deluge rising and disastrously ruining the mountains. Account of powerful nuclear weapons used on Urim, an ancient city that no longer exists, from the tablet, The Lament for Urim. Enlil brought Gibbel as his aid. He called the great storm of heaven, the people grow through it. The great storm howls above, the people groan. The storm that annihilates the land roars below, the people groan. The evil wind, like a rushing torrent, cannot be restrained. The weapons in the city smash heads and consume indiscriminately. The storm whirled gloom around the base of the horizon. The people groan. In front of the storm, heat blazes. The people groan. A fiery glow burns with the raging storm. India's oldest book, the Mahabharata, and ancient weapons of mass destruction. The two great ancient epics of India, Ramayana and Mahabharata, show 1500 BC, are centered on conflicts and refer to military formations, theories of warfare, and esoteric weaponry. Among the principal works and stories that are a part of the Mahabharata are the Bhagavad Gita, the story of Damayanti, an abbreviated version of the Ramayana, and the Rishyasringa, often considered as works in their own right. Traditionally, the authorship of the Mahabharata is attributed to Vyasa, with about 100,000 verses, long prose passages, or about 1.8 million words in total. The Mahabharata is roughly 10 times the length of the Iliad and Odyssey combined, or about 4 times the length of the Ramayana. The Mahabharata pick up the thread of the tale of devastation and destruction. Atlantis, rather displeased at its humiliating defeat, deceived that they were no longer interested in subjugating the Rama Empire, an Indian empire, and decided instead to annihilate the major cities using weapons of mass destruction. Sanskrit scholars could not comprehend what was being described in the epics until the dropping of the first atomic bombs on Japan. The following are authentic verses from the Indian epics. Gurkha, flying a swift and powerful Vimana, fast aircraft, hurled a single projectile, rocket, charged with the power of the universe, nuclear device. An incandescent column of smoke and flame, as bright as 10,000 suns, rose with all its splendor. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and the Andhakas. The corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. Hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all foodstuffs were infected. To escape from this fire, the soldiers threw themselves in streams to wash themselves and their equipment. The Mahabharata. The above description seems like science fiction, but the book takes you deeper into this nuclear war. It was a weapon so powerful that it could destroy the earth in an instant. A great soaring sound in smoke and flames, and on its sights death. Dense arrows of flame, like a great shower, issued forth upon creation, encompassing the enemy. A thick gloom swiftly settled upon the Pandava hosts. All points of the compass were lost in darkness. Fierce wind began to blow upward, showering dust and gravel. Birds croaked madly. The very elements seemed disturbed. The earth shook, scorched by the terrible violent heat of this weapon. Elephants burst into flame and ran, to and fro in a frenzy, over a vast area. Other animals crumpled to the ground and died. From all points of the compass, the arrows of flame rained continuously and fiercely. The Mahabharata, Mausala Parva, Section 1. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and the Andhakas. When then next day came, Samba actually brought forth an iron bolt through which all the individuals in the race of the Vrishnis and the Andhakas became consumed into ashes. Indeed, for the destruction of the Vrishnis and the Andhakas, Samva brought forth, through that curse, a fierce iron bolt that looked like a gigantic messenger of death. The fact was duly reported to the king. In distress of mind, the king, Ugrasena, caused that iron bolt to be reduced to a fine powder. Men were employed to cast the powder into the sea. Source: Masala Parva. Section 2. The streets swarmed with rats and mice. Earthen pots showed cracks or broke from no apparent cause. At night, the rats and mice ate away the hair and nails of slumbering men. Fires, when ignited, cast their flames towards the left. Sometimes they threw out flames whose splendor was blue and red. The sun, whether when rising or setting over the city, seemed to be surrounded by headless trunks of a human form. In cook rooms, upon food that was clean and well boiled, were seen, when it was served out for eating, innumerable worms of diverse kinds. The account of the nuclear war in the Mahabharata has a striking similarity with the Sumerians' tablets. According to the Mahabharata, WMD, weapons of mass destruction, was given to Arjuna by the Lord Krishna. Is he the Sumerian supreme god Anu, to serve as a protective shield for the truth to be successful? It is not clearly said how these WMDs were made available to Arjuna, but to the warring families it was no longer a secret. This WMD during the Kurukshetra war was known as Kakra. Kakra was the most destructive of all weapons that was given personally by Lord Krishna and Lord Vishnu, is he Enlil in the Sumerian version, called it by the other name of Sudalsana, which was more powerful than Barma Satara, the other WMD. It was said that if released, it would generate a great hot ray, reddish sky, and fireball. Kakra launched ancient nuclear. During the chaos of the said war, one of Arjuna's cousins launched the fifth weapon called Barma Satara, which had the impact of a mighty nuclear power. According to the legend, it was not clear how the relatives of Arjuna got to know the secret to launch such weapons. Arjuna himself had to obtain the consent from Lord Krishna, who needed to explain the ways or consequences of such weapons. It was believed that as a result of this launch, it has created layers upon layers of hot rays that penetrated the sky and slowly settled onto the earth as multiple layers. Upon realizing that his own cousin has accidentally released the never-before-used weapon, and upon seeing the massive destruction that this weapon brought, Arjuna pleaded with Lord Krishna to gather all resources to protect what was left on the earth from the massive heat. With the kind guidance from Lord Krishna, Arjuna managed to protect the earth from the nuclear heat wave by deflecting it skyward. This prevented the earth from complete destruction by such nuclear disaster. It was also told that the nuclear cloud and heat wave were noticeable in the area tens of kilometers wide and approximately 10 nautical miles in thickness. During the Kurukshetra, Arjuna, who was coached directly by Krishna on the righteous way of a true noble being and the right path to eternity, was also introduced to yoga. Arjuna was to practice it whenever he faced adversity. Bhakti yoga practiced for 25 minutes would allow the mere mortal to overcome adversity and reach for Lord's guidance. According to Lord Krishna, the WMD was further divided into 3 levels. 1. Highest Kakra weapon, but never before used, Sudalsana. This was the most secretive and complicated weapons owned by Lord Krishna himself. The energy from this weapon would be able to destroy dozens of planets. 2. Second Kakra, Barma Satara, was a gift from Dewa Api to Lord Krishna and has 7 levels. Level Barma Satara. First, level Barma Satara. Second, level Barma Satara. Third, level Barma Satara. Fourth, level Barma Satara. Fifth, used by Arjuna's cousin during Kurukshetra. Level Barma Satara. Sixth, equivalent to the destruction of Hiroshima. Level Barma Satara. 7th, widely used for self-protection and medicines around the world. 3. Third Kakra has 11 subspecies, 111. The Sumerians detonated 7 weapons of mass destruction, and the Mahabharata describes exactly the same weapons. This could not just be a coincidence. Conclusion: the Anunnaki nuclear war, ancient apocalypse, or forgotten history. The evidence of a cataclysmic nuclear war in ancient times, described in both Sumerian tablets and the Indian Mahabharata, is too consistent and too terrifying to dismiss as mere myth. These texts, separated by thousands of miles and centuries, recount eerily similar events. Cities obliterated by firestorms, poisoned rivers, darkened skies, and lingering radiation sickness. The Sumerian account, Anunnaki weapons of mass destruction. The lost book of Enki describes 7 terrifying weapons unleashed by the gods: Ninurta and Nergal, the one without rival, a city-leveling blast; Mountain Melter, a thermonuclear-like weapon; Vaporizer of living things, a radiological weapon; The Aftermath, an evil wind, radiation fallout, swept across Sumer, killing indiscriminately. Archaeological evidence in the Dead Sea region shows sudden abandonment, vitrified stone, and traces of radiation, consistent with a nuclear event around 2024 BC, the Mahabharata's chilling parallels. An iron thunderbolt, as bright as 10,000 suns, a near-perfect description of a nuclear explosion. Hair and nails fell out. Birds turned white. Food became poisoned. Classic symptoms of radiation poisoning: the Kakra and Barma Satara, ancient WMDs with multiple yield levels, eerily resembling modern nuclear classifications. The unthinkable conclusion: this was not natural. The descriptions match man-made or God-made nuclear warfare, not cometary impacts or volcanic eruptions. The Anunnaki were involved. Sumerian texts explicitly name Enlil, Ninurta, and Nergal as orchestrators of the destruction. A global catastrophe? Similar accounts in India, Sumer, and even biblical Sodom and Gomorrah suggest a coordinated or widespread ancient nuclear conflict. Why has this been forgotten? Survivors descend. Ants may have passed down fragmented memories as myths. Later religions sanitized or suppressed these events to maintain theological control. Modern academia often dismisses such claims due to lack of acceptable evidence. But how much more proof do we need? Final verdict: history's first and worst nuclear war, the Anunnaki nuclear war, was real. Whether it was a divine punishment, a war between gods, or a failed attempt to control humanity, the scars remain in our oldest texts, in the irradiated ruins of Sumer, and in the haunting warnings of the Mahabharata. We are not the first civilization to play with fire. Will we be the last? Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George Santayana. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I love hearing from you. Check out more videos on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.